silent revenge that left my cheating wife with nothing. The night my wife told me she was going to sleep with another man, she said it the way you'd mention picking up milk, casual, unblinking, as if betrayal came with a receipt and a generous return policy. Hi. If you're new here, welcome to the kind of story where the walls have ears and the floorboards remember every footstep. If dark, true-to-life tales are your thing, do me a quick favor. Tap like, hit subscribe, and leave a comment telling me what you'd do if the person you loved smiled and set fire to the map. You might think you know. By the end, you may not. I grew up fluent in betrayal. In the Cole house, infidelity wasn't scandal, it was choreography. My father, Arthur, wore other women like he wore cologne, liberally and with little regard for the people suffocating nearby. My mother, Claire, mastered the art of the contained explosion, dinner plated, eyes rimmed with a soft red that matched the heating coil on the stove. People talk about staying for the kids like it's an act of mercy. Sometimes it's just a way to teach those kids exactly what pain looks like when it pretends to be endurance. I told myself I would never be my father. I told myself I would never be my mother. Then I met Marissa, senior year. Cafeteria light that made everyone look half-finished, except her. Honey brown eyes, careful listener, a laugh that arrived late and landed perfectly. We were each other's first, and I, in my young and ferocious optimism, decided we would be each other's last. I picked a steady job at a motorhome dealership because stability looks good in the rear view. People who buy motor coaches are in love with their own futures. They like to imagine the road will not surprise them. That made sense to me. Our little house sat on a quiet street where the garbage truck came exactly when it said it would, and the neighbor with the immaculate lawn measured his life in straight edges. I built our days like a fortress, predictable walls, sensible windows, locks that worked. The call came on a Thursday morning that tasted like burnt coffee and sales quotas. Unknown number. I almost let it die on the screen. Ethan Cole? The voice was neat, clipped, file cabinet tidy. That's me? Grant Porter. I work with your wife. I waited for the words car accident or hospital. Instead, she's fine. You and I need to talk. Noon, the diner on Ridge. I won't say more over the phone. People who bring bad news often prefer daylight. At 12 sharp, Grant appeared in a gray jacket that matched the weather. He didn't sit. He suggested a walk like we were co-conspirators. We crossed the street to the little park that pretends not to notice how many secrets it has held. Your wife's been spending a lot of time with a man named Derek Hale, he said finally, like a surgeon naming a tumor. Lunch together every day. Today they plan tomorrow night. Hilton, dinner, dancing, and a room. She's shopping right now. There are sentences that try to sprint. Mine sat down. I felt my pulse thin into something efficient. Are you saying she's sleeping with him? I'm saying she intends to. She believes you'll be adult about it. He didn't hide the quotation marks. She thinks your love is big enough to survive her curiosity. Why tell me? I asked. He looked past me at a toddler tearing a napkin into confetti. 9 years ago, my wife did the same thing. I was naive. The courts weren't. Think of this as civic duty. I walked back to my car like a man carrying a priceless vase that was already broken. The piece of me that remembered lipstick on my father's collar took the wheel. I didn't confront Marissa that night. I hired a private investigator. And he showed up with a cheap suit and a voice like sandpaper, asked me 2 questions that hurt more than they should, slid a square recorder across the table. If you want the truth, let it talk, he said, and he wasn't wrong. I fried pork chops. Marissa told a story about a printer jam that nearly resulted in a riot. We laughed. The recorder on the mantel listened better than I did. Friday, 5:43 p.m. The staircase exhaled. Marissa descended in a black dress that didn't belong to our closet. Hair pinned, mouth the color of a promise you're not supposed to believe. An overnight bag hung from her shoulder like punctuation. "Where are you going?" I asked, already knowing her answer and hating that I knew. "One of the guys at work asked me to dinner." A pause. Precise. "I've only ever been with you, Ethan." "I want to try something else." "If you leave," I said, "don't come back expecting keys that fit." She kissed my cheek like I was the safe choice, the faithful town you leave for a glittering city. Outside, a horn tapped twice. She went to the door. She didn't look back. People who do not intend to return rarely do. I did not watch her step into Derek Hale's car. I turned off the recorder. I carried a box of heavy-duty trash bags up the stairs and began erasing her. There is a ritualistic comfort in dismantling a life, hanger by hanger, drawer by drawer. Dresses collapsed into plastic like flowers accepting winter. Toiletries into a tote. The curling iron with its long bite-mark cord. The shoebox of high school notes tied in a ribbon that had once meant something. I opened the safe, removed her documents, and placed them in a neat folder because cruelty is not the same as chaos. I carried family photos, her kindergarten grin, the county fair blue ribbons, the bronzed Remington piece her grandfather loved, carefully to the garage. I loaded everything into her car, rolled it out to the curb, left the keys on the seat, and shut the door. I didn't sleep. Saturday took on water and refused to sink. Sunday pretended to be a day. Monday morning, after I finished paperwork for a sweet older couple buying a diesel pusher to celebrate 50 years of not killing each other, the locksmith handed me a ring of new keys. Objects that worked. A sound I liked. At 12:32, the doorbell. "My key doesn't work," Marissa said, confused only by logistics. "And why is my car—" She saw it. "Why is my car on the street?" "Because you don't live here anymore," I said, and it felt like a sentence someone else had taught me. "This is my house," she said. "Ethan, stop." "No," I said, and stepped into the doorway. "All your things are in the car." "Please leave." She tried to slide past me. I didn't move. "We had a disagreement," she said, as if we'd argued about a rug. "You declared a sabbatical from Fidelity," I said. "I declined the terms." She returned with her sister Lena, tighter mouth, softer eyes. They were ready to make me reasonable. I pressed play on the recorder. Marissa's voice filled our hallway, calm, confident, casually cruel. At the end, Lena's face broke like a plate in slow motion. "I didn't know," she said. "Everyone says that when the truth refuses to behave." By afternoon, I was in the office of a divorce attorney who had the polished calm of a person who had seen every permutation of human unkindness. "Why the PI before a conversation?" she asked. "Because I grew up with the smell of perfume on my father's shirts," I said. "Because my mother taught me what staying looks like. Because I refuse to rehearse that play." "If this goes the way your informant predicts," she said, "we can serve papers Monday." Saturday extended into Sunday like a bruise. I watched a Hogan's Heroes marathon and forgot to laugh. The PI called to confirm. He'd planted a camera in the Hilton suite they'd reserved. He had the table number at the restaurant. He had a clear shot of our driveway. Monday at 4, the phone lit up with Marissa's office number. I almost let it go. "It's Grant," he said. "She was served, fainted. Paramedics took her to St. Luke's. Derek read the papers and nearly followed her down." Minutes later, Lena, "She's at the hospital." And she's scared. "I am too," I said. "Of becoming the man who ignores what he knows." The meeting happened in a room with too much carpet and air that smelled like official disappointment. Marissa looked smaller, edges sharpened by fear or resolve. I couldn't tell which. Her attorney wanted the petition dismissed. "No infidelity occurred," she said, practiced and smooth. "My client is willing to pursue counseling." "If no infidelity occurred," my attorney said, "perhaps Mrs. Cole can explain Friday night." Marissa told the gentle version: champagne, dinner, laughter, too much to drink, and a sudden wave of good sense at the threshold of the wrong room. "Nothing happened," she said. "I love my husband." "Not even a kiss?" my attorney asked. "Absolutely not," Marissa said, and I watched the word choose her mouth. I pressed play on the wall screen. The driveway bloomed. Derek opening the door, his hand on her waist, their kiss, confident, practiced, not a hello but an agreement. The room inhaled. "Lie number 1, I said. Cut to the Hilton restaurant. Derek's hand set where it didn't belong, comfortable. "Lie number 2. The elevator. The suite door. 2 figures crossing a line that had once been a vow. Her attorney gathered her papers with a sweep that said billable hours had just become uninteresting. "We'll be in touch," she murmured, and the sisters left. Silence fit the room better than any furniture. I did not yell. I did not throw. I did not become my father. I went back to the dealership and sold a mid-range Class C to a family going to the Grand Canyon. Their son asked where the beds were 6 times. It was the cleanest 15 minutes of my month. The weeks that followed were bureaucratic heartbreak. Marissa called. I didn't answer. Her parents called and tried out sentences like, "if nothing happened," and I didn't let them finish. Grant became my reluctant Greek chorus, offering updates on Derek. Quieter at work, then gone. Rumor of Florida. Lena texted me an address with a note. She's with him. Sunlight has a way of sharpening knives. Then the road shifted under my feet. At the dealership, my boss poked his head into my cubicle. "Remember the Whitakers?" "The Tiffin you sold. Harold had a heart thing up in Vancouver. He's okay. They need someone to fly up and drive the coach home. They asked for you." "Do I go alone?" He smirked. "Take their granddaughter, Camille. She needs the ride." Camille had the posture of a woman who refuses to apologize for space. She took the passenger seat like it owed her money. We started badly. We continued worse. At a rest area in Idaho, I told her, "If you get off the coach, you can't get back on." She looked at me like a warden and stayed anyway. Sometime after midnight, exhaustion finally trapped me on the pullout. I woke to the hum of movement. Camille at the wheel, unbothered, driving a 40-foot diesel like it was a grocery cart. She'd fueled up while I slept, handled the border with a shrug, logged miles like she was being paid per silence. By Texas, we had a non-aggression pact. I made coffee. She drove like monastic penance. We didn't speak unless a truck tried to end us. At the dealership, she dropped my phone off 2 days later, the one I'd left in her grandparents' car because I was an idiot, and then promptly got into a wreck in front of the lot. Broken arm, mild concussion. As the EMTs stabilized her, she glanced up and smirked. "You always catch me at my best," she said, and passed out. Diane, Harold's wife, called 3 days later. They were throwing a barbecue to celebrate his recovery. Lawn, fairy lights, the smell of brisket, the verbal footnotes of 100 close calls. "Bring your wife," she said, then winced at her own sentence. "Or don't. Bring yourself." I arrived, placed a beer in my hand by a man who used to be a stranger, and got pulled into Diane's orbit like a planet glad for gravity. "Where's your wife?" she asked, then saw it land and squeezed my shoulder. "Then she's a fool," she said, and meant it kindly. Camille found me in the library hiding from a man who'd cornered me with dividends. She closed the door and considered me like a problem set. "Apparently I have a behavior problem," she said. "You do," I said, because sometimes truth is anesthesia. Are you going to help me fix it? Not tonight. A week later, we did dinner anyway. Ribeye, medium rare, blue cheese. She sawed it one-handed, the cast a dare she enjoyed winning. We kissed under a streetlight that did us no favors. The next morning, I called my boss. I won't be in. Why not? I'm still on my date. He laughed like a man who remembered being brave or stupid or both. Lena became a newswire I didn't want. Derek hit Marissa. Police, hospital, jail. The pregnancy she'd floated ambiguous stories about was over, a word that covers too many realities. She signed the divorce papers in a wide red flourish, like she wanted the signature to be visible from space. The decree would take its time. Courts age everything on purpose. Meanwhile, Camille borrowed her grandparents' coach and cooked lasagna inside it like that was a normal sentence. 2 glasses of Chianti sweating on the table. "To new beginnings," she said, the cast ticking against her glass. We sat in the quiet that only exists between 2 people who have told too much, too soon, and decided to keep going anyway. If you're still here, if the porch light's on and you've made it through the worst of the night, drop a comment with the moment you would have walked away. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. The next turn is coming faster than you think. Later that week, Grant called with a dry brightness I'd come to recognize. "Derek tried to get his old job back," he said. The answer was no. Consequences aren't poetic, but every now and then they show a sense of humor. My mother, Claire, visited on a Saturday that smelled like rain. She sat on my couch like a woman bracing a bridge. "There are compromises you make in marriage," she said. "Fidelity isn't one. I forgot that for a long time. I'm sorry." We hugged like we were finally finishing something we'd started when I was 10. Marissa's presence thinned into paperwork and rumor. A second meeting with attorneys for asset division, signatures becoming an assembly line. She looked worn, edges filed by some other city's wind. We signed, we stood. "I hope you're happy," she said, which is a weapon disguised as a blessing. "I hope you get help," I said, which I meant in the only way that isn't an insult. That night, the Whitakers texted asking if we could take the coach out on a short run. "Harold wants to practice downshifting," Diane wrote. "If he reads one more forum thread, I'm going to hide the Wi-Fi." Camille and I went, and in the soft rumble of the diesel, with the stink of fresh garlic from a pan she'd smuggled into the tiny kitchen, the road stretched out the way it does for people who haven't given up on themselves yet. The coach idled like a big animal that trusted us. Harold practiced feathering the brake. Diane narrated his progress like a proud sportscaster, and Camille watched me through the reflection in the microwave door. When we finally eased back into the Whitakers' driveway, the sun had slipped behind the eucalyptus and turned everything generous. Inside the coach's galley, she plated what was left of the lasagna. "A victory slice," she said, settling onto the dinette bench across from me. We weren't touching, but the air was. I could feel it in my teeth. "Don't get used to me being nice," she added, as if kindness were a currency she only lugged out on holidays. "I won't," I said, and she smiled at the answer. We kissed at the threshold because the threshold made the rules. Slow, not teenage. Deliberate, not desperate. When I stepped down from the coach, the dealership showroom, right across the lot, reflected 6 faces smashed to the glass like kids at an aquarium. My boss, 2 sales guys, a service tech, the receptionist, and a finance manager who'd never liked me. They scattered in 6 directions like guilty pigeons. Camille laughed without sound, then lifted a hand and gave them a pageant wave that was somehow both mocking and weirdly regal. 10 minutes after she drove the coach away, my phone rang. Diane. "So," she said, voice cheerful as a porch swing, "did my granddaughter feed you?" She did. And it was the best lasagna I've had in a decade. You hear that? she called away from the receiver. In the muffled background, Harold's rumble, "Ask him if he left any." She returned, "He wants to know if you left any." "Tell him he's in luck. There's a square he can claim as a moral victory." "Oh, he'll frame it," she said. "Also, Camille is trying to pretend she doesn't like you." "It's adorable and unconvincing. Please do not ruin this for all of us." "I'll try not to," I said, which was the closest I could get to a promise. The universe doesn't let you live in one plot line for long. Lena called. My phone blinked with her name like a flare, and I let it ring into a pile of missed calls. On the fourth attempt, I answered. "Derek's in jail," she said flatly. "He hit Marissa. She's in the ER, nose broken, some bruising. I hate them both for making me the messenger." I closed my eyes. "And the baby?" Silence. Then the tired sigh of someone who has been rearranging furniture alone. "She lied to me, or she believed a lie and carried it like a torch. There is no baby. The version of me that wanted to say I told you so died poor and unmourned." "Thank you for telling me," I said instead. "She asked me to tell your mother she's sorry," Lena added, as if we needed one more twist of the knife. After we hung up, the night didn't know what it wanted to be. I showered. I sat in the dark living room and watched the streetlights do their alien trick across the wall. I dialed my mother, then didn't. I dialed my boss and left a voicemail with nothing in it but air. I finally fell asleep on the couch, like a man who'd missed a turn 50 miles back and was too stubborn to admit it. Morning arrived, disguised as a text from my attorney. "Service confirmed. Opposing counsel has acknowledged receipt. We are on track for decree in the usual time frame. The law moves like an old cat, with no urgency and a tendency to stare at you while you do all the feeling." At work, the intercom fired. "Ethan, line 6. "Diane again," she announced when I picked up. "We're having steaks Friday to celebrate Harold not driving us off a cliff. You and Camille are coming." "That sounds like a command," I said. "It is. Also, I've hidden his Wi-Fi. If he learns one more thing about engine braking, I'm going to commit a minor crime." I grinned despite the morning. Duly noted. That afternoon, I found Camille waiting by my cubicle, eyebrows staged like a challenge. "Pick me up at 7, she said, not a question. "Are we dressing like adults or like plausible deniability?" She considered. "Somewhere no one recognizes us, and don't wear cologne. It's a lazy lie." I didn't. The restaurant had a back patio, string lights, and a waiter who appeared whenever he was convenient to the plot. Camille ordered ribeye, medium rare, blue cheese, and a baked potato with the kind of confidence that makes everyone else adjust their posture. She carved with her left hand, the right still encased in its plaster decree, and apologized to the steak for not doing it justice. "You're not going to ask," she said between bites. "About? The other people you dated before me?" "The ones I haven't mentioned because I intend to pretend you don't exist when we're not in the same room." "I thought we were doing the version where we tell the truth poorly." She smirked. "It'll come out eventually, but for tonight, we'll pretend honesty can be rationed." We left to find the same gate guard from the first night on duty. He squinted like I owed him money. Camille lowered her window. "It's me again," she said. "Noted," he replied, opening the gate like a man waving a ship into harbor and judging its paint job. Inside her house, she asked, "What do you want to drink?" "Gin and tonic if you have it." She did. 2 sips later, she moved closer. What happened next was adult, mutual, and no one else's business. We didn't perform for ghosts. When the sun pushed its fingers under the blinds, I called my boss. "I won't be in today." He laughed. "You used to be boring." "I liked you better then because you sold more." "I'll sell twice as much next week." "You always say that," he said, then softer. Good for you, kid. The court wanted more signatures, which meant another appointment in the long beige room. This time was quick. Assets enumerated, accounts divided, house addressed in language that made it sound like a chess piece. Marissa looked like a pencil sketch of herself. Less color, more outline. We signed in silence. As we stood to leave, she said without raising her eyes, "I hope you're happy." The line tried to land like a dart. It missed the board. "I hope you don't confuse remorse with repair," I said, and her mouth pressed a thin white line. Outside, Grant called with another entry from the Derek saga. He tried to get rehired. They thanked him for his past contributions by letting him keep his memories. "He'll land somewhere," I said. "Maybe. But maybe not where he wants." For a week, I avoided my mother. When she finally showed up on a Saturday, she carried a tin of lemon squares like a peace treaty. "I was wrong," she said, putting them on the counter, "about asking you to make peace, about believing that love can survive anything if you squint hard enough." "It can," I said, "but sometimes surviving isn't living." She sat and folded her hands, looked like the girl she'd been before my father taught her how to wear denial like jewelry. "I stayed too long when you were little. I thought I was protecting you. I was packaging pain and calling it patience. You taught me the opposite," I said. "You taught me to know when a door is really an exit." We ate lemon squares and said small, irrelevant things for 10 minutes to rest from the larger ones. It felt like learning a new language. Work helped. I sold an A-class diesel to a retired machinist who wanted to see every minor league baseball park in the country. I sold a compact towable to a pair of newlyweds who believed that owning a queen mattress on wheels would inoculate them against discomfort. My boss stopped by my cubicle to tell me he was proud of my numbers and also that I had become less killable. I took it as the compliment he meant. Camille invited me to her grandparents again, but this time she borrowed the coach and parked it behind the dealership, a domestic spaceship among rows of inventory. When I stepped in, the Chianti was already breathing, and the coach smelled like garlic and the faint ghost of diesel that never fully vacates even the cleanest rig. "Clink," she said, holding up her glass. We nudged rims. "To new beginnings." "You already used that line," I said. "Then to continuing." We ate. We talked. We didn't touch for a long stretch on purpose, to prove we could. Then we did because we wanted to. When I finally stepped down from the coach, the showroom window once again contained a collage of faces grinning like second graders at a zoo. My boss opened the door in a parody of chivalry. "Back to work, Romeo," he said. "Or at least pretend. The others are getting the idea they can live on gossip alone." "Let them," I said. "It's cheaper than therapy." Diane called that night with news in her usual cheerful triage. "Harold is practicing downshifting in the driveway. The neighbors are filing a class action lawsuit. Also, Camille likes you." "I had my suspicions," I said. "She hasn't liked anyone in a long time," Diane kept going. "Her last somebody was all talk and no keeping. She overcorrected. It happens. I'll try not to make her regret the course adjustment." "She'll still try to bite you sometimes," she said. "That's how she says hello." The next thing the story asked for was quiet. Weeks of it. A stretch in which nothing dramatic happened, and we learned to operate at normal speed. Marissa became a name that arrived occasionally via Lena in sentences that sounded like they were being read from a file. Court date postponed, public defender assigned to Derek, new address obtained, a job at a bar, then not, then one at a warehouse. I answered with thank yous and nothing more. I did not hate her. I did not miss the past. I missed the person I'd thought I'd married, which is not the same thing and which is nobody's fault in particular. The world is full of ghosts that never lived. Camille and I developed a habit of arguing small to keep from arguing big. We had full-bodied debates about whether a gin and tonic should have 2 ice cubes or 5. Her, 2. Me, 5. Compromise, 3, with the option of a 4th in summer. We quarreled about music for the first 10 minutes of every drive and then, without admitting defeat, listened to whatever the other had chosen. We put our feet on each other's furniture only with explicit consent. We were ridiculous, and it saved us from being tragic. One afternoon, my stepfather, Henry, called to say my mother had been telling anyone who would listen that she had gotten her son back. I told him to tell her she never lost me. He said he would, and after a beat added, "But she did." I decided to let him have the last word. Grant drifted from my life the way a bridge recedes in your rear view. He'd done his civic duty. The road took us to different towns. Before the last drift, he called once more. "My ex and her boyfriend got caught stealing," he said, tone fascinated rather than triumphant. "She pled to a light sentence. He didn't get the memo." A pause. "I don't feel good exactly, but I feel finished." "That's a luxury," I said. "Hold it with both hands." The decree arrived on a Tuesday that felt like a practice Tuesday. Sky indifferent, the mail neatly rubber-banded. The envelope was heavy for what it contained. I slid it open and read legal words that added up to "You are free." There was no music cue. The room didn't get brighter. The coffee didn't taste better. But the air in my chest moved more easily for the first time in months. I put the decree in the safe, where I keep things I do not want to look at to know they are real. That Friday, I brought Camille to the Whitakers for steaks and a night of Harold telling the same story twice with different punchlines. We stood on the lawn under string lights that made everyone more attractive, and Diane took my hand and Camille's and placed them together like she was officiating. "I want to see you both 30 years from now pretending you still like each other," she said. "That's the secret. Pretend long enough and you might end up telling the truth." "Is that how it works?" I asked. "It is tonight," she said. Sometime after 10, my mother showed up at my door unannounced like old habits in a new dress. I let her in. We didn't do speeches this time. We watched part of a black and white movie where everyone speaks in full sentences and means at least 2 things at once. "I wish I'd taught you that kind of line," she said. "You did," I said, "just not with your words." She nodded, satisfied and sad. "Your father would hate this version of you." "I know," I said, and we smiled because it was good news. Late Sunday, Lena texted, "Final property transfer scheduled. After that, I'm going to be hard to reach for a while. Don't worry, it's good for me." I typed, "I'm glad," and meant it. We had become co-survivors of a story neither of us had asked to star in. The last courthouse appointment was prosaic. Someone notarized something. Someone else stamped a thing with the vigor of a person who loves stamps. We stood in a hallway that smelled like paperwork. Marissa passed without touching her eyes to mine. Thinner than the first time we'd kissed. Thicker with experience I would not inventory even if you paid me. Outside, the sun did that indifferent summer thing it does while people end wars and begin lives. We didn't speak. On the drive back, Camille texted a photo. The coach's dinette set for 2, a loaf of bread waiting to be torn by hands that argued about ice cubes. "Dinner if you want it," she wrote. "We can talk about anything except the thing we both think we have to." "Deal," I answered. I parked behind the coach, stepped into the familiar diesel Ghost, and breathed in garlic and tomato and the particular spell that a small kitchen casts when the cook is someone you want. Camille poured Chianti without asking how much. I told her about lemon squares and my mother's quiet. She told me about a cracked tile on her patio that only she could love. We didn't mention Marissa's shape in the air. We didn't need to. The room knew, and sometimes the room holds it for you so you can eat. After we finished the last forkful, she put down her glass. "You ever notice," she said, turning the scar on her forearm like a dial, How the story you tell about yourself has a different villain depending on the day. All the time. Today mine's me, she said. Tomorrow I'll outsource it. Put me in rotation, I said. I'm sturdy. She nodded, stood, and crossed to me. Don't make me regret being nice to you, she said into my collarbone. I'm trying to be the person people don't regret, I said. Ambitious, she said, and we grinned, because ambition is sometimes the only honest prayer. For a while, life cooperated. The dealership kept selling. The Whitakers kept finding excuses to call. Camille kept cooking on a stove that never quite forgave being smaller than it wanted to be. Derek vanished into the Florida backdrop of poor choices. Marissa became a past tense that didn't need a verb. Then the phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in months. Grant again, as if summoned for the penultimate chapter. Thought you'd want the epilogue, he said. Derek tried to be a foreman at a warehouse, made enemies faster than pallets. Last I heard, he's driving nights. It's not a tragedy, it's just appropriate. Sometimes appropriate is the best we get, I said. Sometimes appropriate is more than we deserve, he replied, and we both let the line go quiet because that line felt heavy enough. That night on the coach, as if cued, the power cut for a moment. The dealership's lot lights hiccuped and returned. The refrigerator hummed back to life. Camille lifted her glass again. To new beginnings, she said. You all ready? Shut up, she said affectionately. Let me have my line. We clinked. We let the quiet expand until it became the room's furniture. The day the decree arrived, the mailman whistled the same tuneless bar he always did, as if freedom were just another envelope. I slid it open with a steak knife because I couldn't find the letter opener. And sometimes symbolism refuses to be subtle. The words were dry and exact. Dissolution. Decree. Restored to the status of a single person. It read like instructions for operating a toaster. It felt like being handed back a name I'd loaned to a stranger. I put the papers in the safe with the titles and the passports and the remnants of lives not currently on fire. Then I stood in the kitchen and let the quiet climb the walls. That afternoon, I went to the lot and sold a compact towable to a kind couple who argued beautifully over whether they needed an outdoor kitchen. I watched them negotiate out loud and admire each other afterward, and it made me both happy and tired in the exact ratio of a person who has finally retired from a war. Lena texted a photo of a sky too bright for its own good. I'm going offline for a while. Be well, Ethan. You too, I sent back. You were right to leave, came her last. You were right to stay. For yourself, I replied. No one owes anyone the same strategy. That evening, Camille and I took the coach on a loop just long enough for the town to become a rumor. We parked at a lake that the county pretends is larger than it is. The air moved across the water with the bored dignity of a retired judge. She brought bread. I brought the good olive oil I save for meals that feel like an answer. Tell me one thing you're not proud of, she said out of nowhere, tearing the bread with the seriousness of a sacrament. I loved an idea longer than I should have, I said. I made it a person. I set a place at the table for it. That's practically patriotic, she said, and the smile slanted into real. My turn. I built a fort out of attitude and then complained when no one visited. Consider this a housewarming, I said, and she bumped her shoulder to mine. The phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number from Florida. I let it ring into silence. It rang again. Voicemail took what I wouldn't. Marissa's voice, thin, cautious, spilled into the room when the service transcribed the message. I heard the papers came through. This isn't an apology. Or maybe it is. I'm not asking for anything. Just, I'm trying to be different from the version of me that did what she did. I hope you're okay. I didn't save it. I didn't delete it. I let the cloud keep what it wanted. The world is full of ghosts that never lived. It can house one more. On Tuesday, Diane called with logistical sunshine. Harold has decided we need to try Colorado again, only this time with fewer opinions. Come for dinner first. Also, Camille has been practicing not being awful. Progress is mixed. She's good at mixed, I said. She is, Diane agreed. Don't waste the good parts trying to fix the complicated parts. That's how people ruin each other by accident. I thought of my mother plating dinner like the bomb squad, of my father's cologne, of all the nights I'd mistaken endurance for intimacy. I'll try not to ruin anyone today, I said. You'll fail eventually, she said cheerfully. That's when the real work starts. At the dealership, the intercom called me to the front desk. A small package waited with my name printed neatly. Inside, a familiar bronze Remington statue, the one from Marissa's grandfather I'd carefully packed into her car months ago. No note, no return address, just the weight of something that used to mean inheritance and now meant conclusion. I took it home and set it on a shelf that wasn't important. I didn't want it in a place of honor. I didn't want it in a box in the garage. I wanted it exactly where a fact belongs when it's over. The next weekend, Harold managed the mountain grades with the solemn joy of a choir boy carrying the candle. Diane narrated to keep him honest. Camille leaned back in the passenger seat, boots on the dash because she'd asked and he'd said yes. I sat on the couch of the moving living room and watched trees decide not to fall. Somewhere near the summit, I dozed off and dreamed of a house with all the windows open and nothing inside trying to escape. We pulled into a roadside turnout so gorgeous it felt contraband. Diane cut slices of cold fried chicken with the confidence of someone who has lived enough to choose the picnic. Harold told a story he'd told me before, and I laughed in the right places because politeness is a kind of love. Camille handed me a thermos and said, "Don't get sentimental, it's tacky." I said, "I'm a salesman. Sentiment pays." She said, "I hate it when you're right." We were both grinning. Back home, the days did their slow alchemy. Grant drifted off the edge of the map with a final text. "We're square, yeah?" And I answered, "Yeah, thank you." The PI sent his last invoice with a note that read, "You're boring now. Good." My attorney emailed the tidy phrase, "Case closed," and invited me to review her if I had the energy. I gave her 5 stars and wrote, "She is the calm in the room where the storm tries to be clever." The dealership printed a Salesperson of the Month certificate with a font that believed in itself too hard. My boss shook my hand in front of everyone as if they didn't already know, and then told me to go home early before I started thinking I was special. I didn't. I went to the coach. Camille had turned the little galley into a laboratory of garlic and tomatoes. The kitchen light made her hair look like a decision. "Clink," she said. We touched glasses. The road outside the lot hummed with people driving toward errands they hoped would disguise themselves as meaning. "Tell me one thing you're proud of," she said, ladling sauce like an argument she expected to win. "I didn't become my father," I said. "Low bar," she said. "Fine. I didn't become my mother either." "Higher," she admitted. "Your turn to ask." "What are you proud of?" She considered. "I didn't make you pay for other people's promises." I put down my fork. "That's not nothing. It's not everything," she said. "But it's the part I get to control." We ate. We talked about petty things that matter because they're ours. Ice cubes, playlists, the ethics of sitting on countertops. She took my hand across the table. Not for show, not for rescue, just for inventory. We were here. We were not pretending to be someone else. Later, as we rinsed plates in a sink too small for the size of our appetites, the coach did its familiar power hiccup. The lot lights blinked. The fridge sighed back to life. She raised her glass again, mock exasperated and undeniably pleased. "To new beginnings," she said. "You know I'm going to start charging you royalties," I said. "I'll pay in lasagna," she answered. which is a currency I respect. We didn't fix each other. We didn't try. We made space. We told the truth even when it would have been easier to be charming. We asked for forgiveness in advance for mistakes we planned to make by accident. It was unremarkable in all the right ways. A week later, I drove home past the house where I had once practiced being a ghost. The new owners had painted the door a cheerful blue. A tricycle leaned against the porch column like a promise. I didn't slow down. A life can be grateful without wanting to go inside. People ask, out loud, or with their eyes, or by watching too long, if I ever wanted revenge. I tell them the truth. I did. I wanted a version with fireworks and public ruin and a speech. Instead, I got the quiet kind. I did not turn into the person I feared most. I walked away without slamming anything I couldn't afford to replace. I learned the shapes of locks that fit and promises that hold. If that's not revenge, it's something better, and better is rare. The last time I heard from Marissa, it was a postcard with a beach printed on one side and 6 words on the other. I hope you're okay. I am. No return address. No place to send anything back. Good. Some doors are best when they stay printed on paper. One more scene because endings deserve a light left on. We're in the Whitakers' driveway. Harold is lecturing the brake pedal. Diane is passing lemonade like a law. Camille is at my side, her arm healed. The scar a fine silver line she toys with when she's thoughtful. The evening is the color of forgiveness after it realizes it doesn't owe anyone money. Ready? She asks. For the road? I say. For all of it, she says. I think about my father's shirts and my mother's eyes, and the recorder on the mantel and the Hilton elevator and the long beige room where lies get tired. I think about lemon squares and diesel hum and the kind of laughter you earn. Then I do something radical. I say yes. We climb into the coach. The engine turns over like a polite dragon. The lot gate yawns. The road does what roads do when you've finally stopped asking them to be something they're not. It opens. If you made it with me to this last mile, thank you. Tell me in the comments which moment changed your mind about what revenge should look like. If this story stayed with you, tap like, subscribe for more true twisty tales told straight, and share it with someone who needs proof that walking away can be the bravest plot twist of all.